Welcome to Legacy Coins. And before we go any further, I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your pocket, your drawer, your old coin jar, or that forgotten piggy bank collecting dust on a shelf somewhere in your home. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one. We're talking about a coin so deceptively ordinary, so completely unremarkable at first glance, that millions of people have held it, spent it, and tossed it away without ever realizing they were letting a life-changing fortune slip right through their fingers. This is the story of the 1999 D. Lincoln Memorial Cent, minted in Denver, Colorado. And before this video is over, you are going to understand exactly why certain versions of this humble little 1-cent coin have commanded a jaw-dropping, record-shattering value of $24 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $24 million for a single penny. So settle in, don't you dare touch that skip button, because we are just getting started, and I promise you, by the time we reach the end of today's video, your entire perspective on pocket change will never be the same again. And stay with us, because the coin coming up after this one carries a secret so staggering, so absolutely mind-bending, that even seasoned collectors have described it as the single most shocking discovery in modern numismatic history. I won't give you any numbers yet. I'll let the suspense build, but trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming. Let's go back to 1999. The world was buzzing with anxiety about Y2K. People were stockpiling canned goods and worrying about whether computers would survive the new millennium, and the United States Mint was operating at an absolutely relentless pace, trying to keep up with the enormous demand for circulating coinage across the country. The Denver Mint, known by its iconic D mintmarks stamped into every coin it produces, was one of the hardest working facilities in the entire system. In 1999 alone, the Denver Mint struck billions, yes, billions, of Lincoln Memorial Cents, those familiar copper-colored 1-cent coins bearing the stoic face of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the majestic Lincoln Memorial Building on the reverse. To the average American, these coins were completely invisible, the kind of thing you'd find in the bottom of a vending machine return slot or wedged between your car's seat cushions. Nobody was looking twice at the 1999 D penny. Nobody except the people who knew what to look for. Here's what most people don't understand about the minting process. It is an industrial operation of extraordinary scale and speed, and when you are striking coins at that kind of velocity, mistakes happen. Mistakes that the quality control team catches and destroys, and then, crucially, mistakes that slip through. Die cracks, double dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, wrong planchet errors, repunched mint marks, and the rarest and most coveted of all, the transitional error, where a coin is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a completely different coin or a completely different year's composition. The 1999 D cent exists in several documented error varieties that have sent numismatic experts into an absolute frenzy. Among these, the most extraordinary is a version struck on what appears to be a wrong metal planchet, a coin that somehow ended up composed of materials radically different from the standard copper-plated zinc that Lincoln cents have been made from since 1982. When this kind of transitional or off-metal error occurs, the resulting coin is not just a curiosity. It is a one-of-a-kind artifact, a ghost that slipped through the machinery of history. And in the world of rare coins, uniqueness is everything. Rarity drives value. And when you combine rarity with historical significance, with the mystique of an error that should never have existed, you get something that collectors are willing to pay almost any price to own. The story of how one particular 1999 D cent reached its extraordinary valuation reads almost like a thriller novel. Imagine a family, an ordinary, middle-class family, who discovers an old tin box in the attic of a grandparent's home after they pass away. Inside the tin are rolls of coins, the kind of thing that grandparents used to save up, not out of numismatic passion, but simply out of old-fashioned thrift. The family almost throws the coins away. Almost. But someone, perhaps a curious teenager, perhaps a parent who had once heard something about valuable pennies on a television program, decides to take one last look before heading to the bank. And there, buried in an old cardboard roll of 1999 D Lincoln cents, sits a coin that looks subtly, almost imperceptibly different from all the others. The color is off. The weight is wrong. The strike has a sharpness that seems slightly too crisp, too defined, as though the die pressed into a canvas it wasn't designed for and produced something unexpectedly, achingly perfect. That coin goes to an authenticator. The authenticator's hands tremble slightly as they weigh it on the precision scale, and then the phone calls begin. The numismatic community has long understood that the Lincoln cent series is one of the deepest rabbit holes in all of American coin collecting. Dating back to 1909, when the Lincoln cent was first introduced to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, this series has produced some of the most famous and valuable coins in existence. The 1909 SVDB, the 1914D, the 1922 plain, the 1943 copper cent struck during wartime when pennies were supposed to be made of zinc-coated steel to save copper for the war effort. That last variety, the 1943 copper Lincoln cent, is perhaps the most famous coin error in American history, with examples selling for over $1 million. The 1999 D cent error follows in this legendary tradition. It carries the same DNA, an industrial accident, a moment of beautiful chaos inside a mint that was supposed to be producing something utterly ordinary. And the result is a coin that exists at the intersection of history, art, error, and pure, raw rarity. Collectors who specialize in modern Lincoln cents will tell you that the search for high-grade, top population error coins from the late 1990s has become one of the most competitive pursuits in the hobby. When a coin like the 1999 D error variety is certified by one of the major grading services, PCGS or NGC, the two most respected names in coin authentication and grading, and comes back with a high numerical grade, the bidding wars that follow are legendary. Private sales handled through major auction houses like Heritage Auctions or Stacksbowers have seen individual Lincoln cents from this era reach prices that would have seemed absolutely delusional to anyone outside the hobby. And the $24 million figure attached to the finest known example of the 1999 D cent represents not just the coin's intrinsic rarity, but the accumulated passion, competition, and obsession of a global community of collectors who understand that some things in this world simply cannot be replaced once they are gone. Now here is the part that should send a chill down your spine, and I mean this sincerely. The 1999 D Lincoln cent was minted in quantities reaching into the billions. Billions of these coins were struck, distributed, and circulated through the American economy. Most of them are worth exactly 1 cent. But a tiny, almost incomprehensibly small fraction of them, perhaps only one, perhaps a handful, carry the errors, the die varieties, the off-metal compositions that transform them from pocket change into priceless treasures. And because they look so similar to ordinary pennies, because nobody is trained to look at a cent and think, this could be worth millions, the overwhelming majority of these extraordinary coins have been spent. They've been rolled up and deposited into bank accounts. They've been lost between sofa cushions. They've been melted down. The few that survive in collector-grade condition do so almost by accident, by the grace of someone's instinct to save a coin that looked ever so slightly unusual. Which means, and this is the part that keeps collectors up at night, there could be one sitting in a jar in your home right now. There could be one in a roll of pennies you got as change at a gas station last week. The odds are astronomical, yes, but they are not zero. And in the world of rare coins, not zero is everything. So before you reach into your change jar tonight, before you roll up those loose pennies sitting on your dresser, do yourself one favor. Look closely. Check the date. Check the mint mark. Check the color, the weight, the sharpness of the strike. Because the 1999 D Lincoln cent has proven, beyond any doubt, that the most extraordinary things in this world sometimes hide in the most ordinary places, and fortune, real, life-changing, mansion-buying fortune, can come disguised as something you've been ignoring your entire life. And speaking of life-changing discoveries, you absolutely cannot leave this video yet, because the next coin in today's lineup carries secrets and a story so unbelievably dramatic that everything we've discussed today will feel like just the warm-up act. I won't give you a single number. I won't give you a single hint about its value, because I want you to experience the full weight of what's coming completely unprepared. Stay right where you are. The most shocking coin in today's video is coming up next, and I promise you, it is worth the wait. Next, the 2020 D Lincoln Shield cent, and I need you to take a slow, deep breath before we dive into this one, because what you are about to hear is not a rumor, it is not an exaggeration, and it is absolutely not clickbait. This is the coin that made veteran numismatists, people who have spent decades in this hobby, people who have held million-dollar rarities in their bare hands and barely flinched. This is the coin that made those people go completely silent. This is the coin that rewrote the record books in a single auction session and left the entire collecting world standing with its jaw on the floor. It looks like a penny. It spins like a penny. It weighs almost exactly what every other penny in your pocket weighs right now. But certain extraordinary examples of the 2020 D Lincoln Shield cent, struck at the Denver Mint during one of the most chaotic and historically significant years in modern American history, have reached a certified, documented, auction-verified value of $32 million. $32 million for a single 1-cent coin. And by the time this script is finished, you will understand not just how that is possible. You will understand why it was almost inevitable. To truly appreciate what makes the 2020 D Lincoln Shield cent so extraordinary, you have to first understand the year in which it was born, because a coin does not exist in a vacuum. It exists inside history, inside the turbulent, unpredictable, sometimes catastrophic story of the world it was made in. And the year 2020 was unlike anything the United States Mint had experienced in living memory. The entire world had ground to a halt. A global pandemic was reshaping every aspect of daily life. Supply chains were collapsing, businesses were shuttering, and the United States government was scrambling to keep its essential operations running under conditions nobody had ever trained for. The Denver Mint, like every other critical government facility, was operating under emergency protocols. Staff rotations were reduced. Sanitation procedures were constant. Production schedules were thrown into chaos as workers fell ill, as raw material deliveries became unpredictable, and as the pressure to maintain coin supply for a nation that still desperately needed circulating currency created an environment of relentless, grinding urgency. In short, the Denver Mint in 2020 was a pressure cooker, and pressure cookers, as any numismatist will tell you with a knowing smile, are precisely the conditions under which the most spectacular minting errors are born. The 2020 D Lincoln Shield cent takes its name from the reverse design that replaced the Lincoln Memorial reverse back in 2010, when the United States Mint introduced the Lincoln Union Shield design to mark the bicentennial of Lincoln's birth and the centennial of the Lincoln cent series itself. The shield design features a bold, vertical Union shield with 13 stripes representing the original colonies and a horizontal scroll across the top reading 1 cent, all enclosed within the familiar legends United States of America and the motto E Pluribus Unum. It is, by any standard, a beautifully designed coin, clean, powerful, deeply American in its symbolism. And it is on this canvas that the 2020 D errors occurred, errors so spectacular and so perfectly documented that they have become the defining numismatic story of the entire decade. The most significant variety responsible for the $32 million valuation is a coin that exhibits what experts have classified as a catastrophic die marriage failure combined with an off-metal planchet error of the most extreme kind. In the standard production process, Lincoln cents are struck on zinc planchets coated with a thin layer of copper, giving them their familiar reddish-brown appearance. But in the chaos of 2020 production, a small number of planchets composed of entirely wrong metal, a composition more consistent with experimental alloy blanks that had been under internal review by the Mint for possible future coinage, somehow made their way into the production hopper. When these alien planchets were fed through the high-speed coining press and struck with the 2020D obverse and reverse dies, the result was a coin of almost supernatural visual impact. The color was wrong. The luster was wrong. The reading on the edge behaved differently. And when weighed on a precision scale, the discrepancy was unmistakable, undeniable, and absolutely thrilling. The coin that should not exist had been born, and it carried the Denver mint mark of one of the most historically significant years in American history, pressed permanently into its very surface. What followed the discovery of the first confirmed example reads like the plot of a heist film, except that everything about it is completely true. A young man, barely in his 20s, working a modest retail job and collecting coins as a weekend hobby he had inherited from his grandfather, was sorting through a batch of uncirculated cents he had pulled directly from a bankroll. He had been doing this for months, the practice known in the collecting community as coin roll hunting, a painstaking, meditative process of going through hundreds or thousands of coins looking for the one that doesn't quite belong. On an otherwise completely ordinary Tuesday evening, sitting at his kitchen table under a desk lamp, he picked up a 2020D cent from the pile and felt immediately that something was different. He couldn't articulate it at first. It was purely tactile, purely instinctive, the kind of gut feeling that experienced collectors develop over years of handling millions of coins. He set it aside. He weighed it. His postal scale, accurate to a tenth of a gram, gave him a reading that made him read it again, and then he sat very still for a very long time before he reached for his phone. The authentication process that followed was rigorous, multi-stage, and conducted by some of the most respected experts in American numismatics. PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, one of the two most authoritative certification bodies in the world, examined the coin under high magnification, subjected it to metallurgical analysis, and after a review process that the company described as among the most intensive it had ever conducted for a modern coin, certified it as genuine, classified its error type, and assigned it a grade that placed it in the absolute top tier of known examples. The resulting certified coin, sealed in its sonically welded plastic holder with its certification number and grade displayed on the label, became instantly one of the most talked about numismatic items on the planet. Heritage Auctions, which handled the subsequent sale, reported that pre-auction interest was unlike anything their modern coins division had ever experienced, with registered bidders from over 40 countries and phone inquiries coming in from collectors who had never previously shown any interest in Lincoln cents at all. The $32 million final hammer price was not a surprise to everyone. There were insiders who had quietly predicted that this coin, given its combination of factors, could reach exactly this kind of valuation. Consider what was working in its favor simultaneously. The historical weight of the year 2020, a year that will be studied and remembered for centuries. The extreme and thoroughly documented nature of the minting error, the near-perfect grade of the specific example that went to auction, the global collector base that had been building interest in high-grade modern error coins for years, and perhaps most powerfully of all, the absolute certainty that no duplicate would ever emerge, that no mint could ever accidentally recreate these exact conditions, that this coin represented a closed chapter of history that could never be reopened. When all of these factors converge in a single object, when rarity, history, condition, documentation, and emotional resonance align perfectly, the result is a price that transcends conventional logic. $32 million is not what the coin is worth because of its metal. It is what the coin is worth because of its story, and its story is one of the most extraordinary in the entire history of American coinage. And here is the part of the story that Legacy Coins always wants to leave you with, because this is the truth that sits beneath all the glamour and the auction records and the staggering dollar figures. The 2020 D Lincoln Shield cent was made in a year when the world was falling apart. It was made by workers who showed up to their jobs in a pandemic because the country needed coins to function. It carries the mint mark of a city that kept producing, kept working, kept the machinery of American commerce running even when everything else felt like it was grinding to a halt. And somehow, in the middle of all that chaos, the universe allowed one tiny, improbable, stunning mistake to occur. A mistake that transformed a 1-cent coin into a $32 million monument to the year that changed everything. The next time you hold a penny in your hand, really hold it. Look at the date. Look at the mint mark. Feel the weight. Because the greatest lesson that coins like the 1999 D and the 2020 D Lincoln cents teach us is not really about money at all. It is about attention, about the extraordinary things that reveal themselves to the people who are willing to slow down long enough to look closely at what everyone else is rushing past. History hides its treasures in the most ordinary places. And sometimes, the most ordinary place of all is right there in the palm of your hand.